You walked into that conversation prepared. You had the facts, the logic, the data. You were right, and you still lost. Not because your argument was weak, because you were playing inside someone else's game, and you never noticed. That's the thing about frames. You can't see the cage you're already standing in. Every conversation you enter has a structure, a set of invisible assumptions that decides what questions are valid, what answers are acceptable, and who holds the power. Most people spend their entire lives answering questions that were designed to make them lose. Smart people are the worst at this, because smart people are trained to answer well. School rewarded the best answer. Work rewarded the best solution. Your whole identity is built around being the person with the right response. But the person who controls the frame doesn't need the right answer. They control what right even means. This is episode 11. Dr. Hoot. Today we're talking about frame control, the most underestimated linguistic weapon in human interaction. Let's be precise about what a frame is. A frame is not an argument. It's the context that determines how an argument will be judged before it even starts. Ask someone, "Why did you fail?" And you've already decided they fail. Ask, "What would have made this succeed?" And you've shifted the entire emotional architecture of the conversation. Same situation, different frame, completely different power dynamic. Daniel Kahneman proved this with cold data. His research on framing effects showed that identical information presented differently produces dramatically different decisions. Doctors recommend surgery more often when outcomes are framed as survival rates than as mortality rates, even when the numbers are mathematically identical. Your brain doesn't process reality. It processes the packaging reality arrives in, and someone is always designing that packaging. The question is whether it's you or someone else. Here's what's actually happening when you lose a negotiation, a performance review, an argument with a client, or a conversation with your partner. You accepted the frame. You walked in, saw the question on the table, and started answering it. Diligently, intelligently, completely missing that the question itself was a trap. Answering inside a bad frame is like running faster in the wrong direction. Your effort makes things worse. Let's get into the specific patterns. How smart people surrender the frame without knowing it, and what to do instead. Pattern 1. Answering the accusation instead of naming the premise. Someone says, "Why is your team always late on deliverables?" The smart person hears "late on deliverables" and starts defending. They explain the resourcing constraints, the shifting scope, the external dependencies. They build a case. They marshal the evidence. They've already lost. The word "always" was a grenade, and they ran right past it. Always is not a fact. It's a frame. It installs a pattern as reality before the conversation even begins. Once you start defending against always, you've implicitly confirmed it. The psychological route is called reactive devaluation, the tendency to engage with an attack on its own terms, which validates the attack's premise by default. The countermove is not to counterattack. It's to surface the assumption. I want to address that, but I want to make sure we're working with accurate language. Always is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Let's look at the actual timeline. You haven't defended anything. You've moved the conversation to a different floor. Your floor. This is not aggression. This is architecture. Pattern 2. The reasonableness trap. Mistaking their terms for neutral ground. This one is subtle and expensive. In a salary negotiation, the hiring manager says, "We try to stay close to your current compensation. What are you making now?" That question sounds reasonable. It sounds like they're trying to be fair. Smart professionals answer it honestly, because they've been raised to believe that honest, reasonable people get fair outcomes. Here's what actually happened. They just handed over their anchor. The entire negotiation will now orbit around a number they provided, in a frame they did not choose. The frame hidden in that question is, "This your current salary is the relevant starting point." Your current salary determines your value, but that is not a neutral fact. It's a choice. Someone else's choice. The psychological mechanism is called anchoring bias. The first number in any negotiation exerts disproportionate gravitational pull on every number that follows. Whoever sets the anchor shapes the final outcome, regardless of what arguments are made afterward. The countermove is to redirect without refusing. I'd rather anchor to the market rate for this role and my level of contribution. Based on what I'm seeing, the range I'm targeting is X to Y. Does that work for this conversation? You've declined their frame and installed yours. Politely. Firmly. Finally. The person who names the range first wins. Not because of the number. Because of the frame around the number. Pattern 3. Accepting the evaluative language. Someone calls your proposal too aggressive. You hear criticism. You soften. You explain. You offer to adjust. Stop. Aggressive is not a measurement. It's a judgment disguised as a measurement. And the moment you accept that word without questioning it, you've agreed that your proposal needs to be less, not different, less. This is what linguists call loaded language, words that carry embedded evaluations, packaged to look like neutral descriptions. Every negotiation, every performance review, every feedback session is loaded with these words. Too much. Not quite. A bit strong. Unrealistic. Each one is a frame. Each one is asking you to accept a verdict before the trial. The countermove, replace their adjective with a question. When you say aggressive, what specifically is outside the range you'd consider? Let's define the parameters. Now they have to produce actual criteria, actual data, actual reasoning. They have to step out of the frame they built and stand in the light. Most people cannot do that. The judgment was a bluff. You just called it. Pattern 4. The false binary. You're either with us on this, or you're not committed to the project. You can either meet this deadline, or we'll need to discuss your priorities. Are you a team player, or do you just care about your own metrics? These are not questions. These are frames constructed as questions. They offer 2 exits from a room that has a 3rd door. And they're built to make you feel like option C doesn't exist. Smart people fall for this constantly. Because smart people are trained to analyze the options presented to them. They compare option A to option B rigorously, exhaustively, and never ask who decided these were the only options. The psychological root is called the false dilemma, a cognitive structure that artificially constrains the solution space to create leverage. The countermove is to name the structure without attacking the person. I don't think that's actually the binary here. There's a 3rd option. Can I walk you through it? 1 sentence. You've dismantled the trap and positioned yourself as the person who sees more clearly than everyone else in the room. That's authority, not volume, not aggression. Clarity. Pattern 5. Reacting to the emotion instead of the frame underneath it. This is the most expensive mistake smart people make in personal relationships and high-stakes conversations. Someone comes at you with heat, frustration, accusation. You feel the temperature, and you respond to the temperature, defending yourself, explaining, or matching their energy. You've just been moved. And whoever moves first in a high-emotion conversation loses the frame. Here's what's happening underneath the heat. Every emotional escalation is a frame bid. The person escalating is trying to establish this is a crisis. And crises require immediate reactive responses. If you react, you confirm the frame. The psychological mechanism is called emotional contagion, the automatic mirroring of another person's affective state. It bypasses your prefrontal cortex and hijacks your response. The countermove is deliberate deceleration. You slow down. You lower your voice. You take 1 beat before responding. Not because you're suppressing emotion, because you are declining their frame. Physically, physiologically, the calmest person in the room controls the room's reality. That's not a metaphor. It's neurological. Now let's connect these 5 patterns to the single error underneath all of them. Every one of these mistakes has the same root. You treated the conversation as a content problem, when it was always a structure problem. You focused on what to say, when the only question that mattered was, whose architecture are we standing in? Smart people over-index on content. They refine the argument, polish the logic, perfect the delivery. They are optimizing the furniture while someone else owns the building. Frame control is not about manipulation. It's about refusing to be manipulated by default. Robert Cialdini's work on influence shows that most persuasion doesn't work through logic. It works through structural shortcuts. People accept the frame they encounter first, evaluate options within that frame, and never question the frame itself. You are not exempt from this. Your intelligence makes you better at working inside frames. It does not make you better at seeing them. That's the real gap. Not IQ. Not information. Perception of structure. George Lakoff spent decades studying political framing and found one consistent principle. When you argue against a frame using the frame's own language, you reinforce the frame. If someone says you're wasteful and you say, I'm not wasteful, you've just made them think about waste twice. You lose, even when you're right. The only winning move is to replace the frame entirely. Introduce different language. Establish a different context. Make the original frame irrelevant. This is not a debate technique. This is how reality gets constructed in human interaction. The person who names the situation controls the situation. Think about every conversation you've lost in the last year. Not because your logic was wrong. Not because you lacked information. Because you walked into someone else's building and tried to renovate it from the inside. The facts don't set you free. The frame does. So here is what this looks like in practice. The actual habit you need to build. Before you respond to any high-stakes question, ask yourself one thing first. Is this question designed for me to win or designed for me to answer? Those are not the same. A question designed for you to answer gives the asker control of the context. You become a witness in their trial. A question designed for you to win is one you've reframed or refused before the conversation locked in. The habit is a single internal trigger phrase. Whose frame is this? Not out loud. Just to yourself. Before you open your mouth. If the answer is theirs, pause. Surface the assumption. Name the structure. Redirect to your context. If the answer is yours, proceed. Build your case on your ground. This will feel unnatural at first, because your whole life you've been rewarded for answering well. You've been conditioned to accept the question and perform inside it. Unlearning that is not comfortable. It is necessary. The most dangerous thing an intelligent person can do is become an expert at playing the wrong game. You have spent years getting better at answering questions. Start getting better at deciding which questions deserve an answer. That's the shift. That's the whole thing. Words don't just describe reality. Words build the room where reality gets decided. Next episode, we're going after something that every high performer dismisses and every high performer secretly needs. Luck. Not the mystical kind. Not superstition. The structural kind. Research in network science and probability theory shows that luck is not random. It's a function of surface area. The more entry points you create for opportunity, the more luck finds you. The question isn't whether you're lucky. The question is whether your environment is engineered to make luck inevitable. We'll break down exactly how to build that system and why smart people systematically underinvest in it. If you want to build the system, you already know what to do.